Hello and welcome to Marketing Dividends, where we look at marketing's new and expanding role in company growth. I'm joined this week by Mark Reinke, Group Executive of Customer Data and Marketing at Suncorp. So Mark, what is marketing's contribution to growth at Suncorp?
I think about that question through the eyes of our shareholders, because that's where the rubber really hits the road. Shareholders are looking for two things, one of them more today, one of them more tomorrow. From a today point of view, they're looking for growth in earnings. If you're not growing your earnings, you don't get a lot of love from shareholders, and therefore that's really important. From a marketing perspective, we have a lot of levers, but predominantly we focus on volume and value and trying to maximise those. From a tomorrow point of view, what we need to be able to do is to show earnings through the cycle, that we've got good, strong cash flows, no matter where the economy goes, and in particular, to make sure that we've got sustainable brands and business models so that we're not going to be disrupted. So shareholders are looking for today and they're looking for tomorrow, and marketers can make a big difference on both.
This definitely feels like a change for marketers, because you said today and tomorrow. I want to know what happened yesterday. What were marketers doing?
Look, I think yesterday was much more around communications. It was more of an interruption model. We were there to get the attention of customers and try and sell them. Tomorrow's much different. What we're trying to do is to solve customer problems, to create experiences that are authentic and that at the end of the day, consumers feel like our interests are aligned with their interests.
And this change, how sustainable is it? Where do you see marketing in the future? And especially in relation to shareholders' perspective on what marketers are able to deliver?
Marketers need to be designers of experiences, and those experiences mean that we need to line them up against the problems that customers care about. So sales will come if you get that right, and we can understand how earnings will flow from that, but right now we have to make sure we're solving a customer's problems, not our problems.
Telling us shareholders want growth, marketing is the engine for that growth. What tools are you using right now to deliver that?
I think the biggest difference in tools, James, is data, and it's been oft talked about, but data is the raw material for growth. Data allows us to build new customer experiences that are much easier and faster and simpler for our customers. Data allows us to understand in real time where the growth is. We don't want to be lagged. In many cases we can see growth, but we've been too slow to find it and do something about it. Data allows us to take enormous complexity and simplify, and that allows us to move faster. So I think the biggest difference is data and its ability to underpin new experiences and allow us to move faster.
Data as a raw material. Now, I'm seeing your new and evolved title at Suncorp. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Our strategy is to meet more of our customers' needs, to grow our business. That's a big growth lever for us. We've got 9 million customer relationships and 14 brands, so we've got a really powerful combination of assets. It's how you cook that cake, if you like. We've got all of the ingredients, but a core part of that is customers, marketing and data. And so my job is to bring that together in a way that allows us to set up a business that I would call sense and respond. That we're able to sense behaviour and then be able to set the culture of our company up to be able to do something about that behaviour in near or real time, which is quite a challenge because when you're moving culture, it can take time.
Data as a raw material, customer data and marketing in the title. I'm intrigued. Can you tell us about this combination?
Well, it's core to our strategy, James. I mean, bringing those things together is very important. It allows us to create experiences that are exceptional for our customers. We need to build a high advocacy business, and taking the friction out of our experiences is really important. Secondly, what we want to do is to be able to sense behaviour and set up our company to be able to respond to that, to build a culture of high velocity decision making and the culture to be able to act on that quickly.
That feels in line with a lot of what I've been reading out of Suncorp, and I love the word agile. I've been hearing a lot. What does that mean to Suncorp?
Agile is actually a software development methodology. It's taken software from, I think, a clunky, slow development process to a very fast and highly iterative process. So what that's allowed us to do is to, rather than work in a project sense, which tends to be slow and expensive, it allows us to put together teams, and those teams are cross-functional, self-organising and iterative. So we're constantly iterating. That means that we can move faster. Very important for us because software companies are eating the world, and we can't afford to have great ideas and have software companies get there faster. So we have to move at least at their speed. It also means that IT people and marketing people are working together on a short cycle and creating outcomes that make sense. I think it's also important because marketing's no longer about delivering campaigns, as we mentioned. Marketing's about always on, constantly iterating with your customers, and this is a great methodology to do that.
Everyone talks about creative destruction. My question is, as a fairly large corporate, how are you ensuring that you're not disrupted?
I think, James, we work from a really simple premise, and that is that we can't predict the future, but we can prepare for it. And we have a couple different ways we do that, but one that we found really quite successful allows us to paint a number of different futures, 10, 15, 20 different futures, none of which we think will really be a likely outcome. What we're able to do then is to look across those futures and look at the forces that are shaping those futures. From that, and when we take those forces and smash it together with our business model and look for incoherence, because what we're really looking for is whether our business model, our ability to make money in the future, is likely to be intact. Once we smash that together, we look for risks. And with those risks, we then adopt what we call learning positions and options around those learning positions. So no matter which way the market goes, we can adapt. And we think that's really important because we don't think it's the strongest that will survive. We don't think it's the smartest, the biggest, the best capitalised, or maybe even the best marketers. What we think is that it's the most adaptive that will survive. So we have to have our antenna up, looking for those weak signals and constantly adapting.
Mark, we're talking about scenario planning, and companies such as Shell have a very clearly defined approach, which we're well aware of. How would you define Suncorp's approach to scenario planning?
I think, James, our approach is perhaps different in the belief that we don't think we can get to the future from today, but we think we can get to today from the future. And what that means, I guess, is that we think if we just build incrementally from where we are, we're probably bringing too many of our current paradigms, and the future just won't look like that. If we can imagine the forces that are shaping the future and create optionality around those forces, what we think is that we're going to be a much more adaptable company, no matter what the future holds. So we're not trying to predict the future, but we're trying to work backwards from that to take positions that make us better ready for the future.
Who helps you imagine these futures?
We think the power is in the hands of our people. So what we do is take an oblique slice of our people. We take people from the top of the organisation, the bottom of the organisation, across our organisation, and give them the licence to think about the future uninhibited. And what we've found is you start off thinking about the future on a 20-year, a 30-year basis in ways that you just can't believe. People are very creative, and this is a creative process to some degree. But when you look across the futures that different teams create, you'll see themes and you'll see forces there that are actually quite powerful on their own and together. The number one thing that I've learnt out of this is you start off thinking about forces that are 20 and 30 years out, and a week later you're starting to see weak signals of those forces already here. And we have a great saying, James, which I think is proven true many times in our business. You can't see what you're not looking for. And the great benefit of this process is you start to see things that are always there, always surrounding you, but you couldn't see it. This puts your antenna up. You can see change. You couldn't see it before.
Antenna up, is this marketing as a radar for the organisation?
It's bigger than marketing. I think marketing has an intuition and a lot of tools that are really useful in this space, but it needs to be more than marketing. Marketing needs to be a catalyst, but I don't think marketing can do it on its own, because you need to affect change, and change needs to happen in organisations on a large scale, and that's why I think culture is so important. Ultimately, what you're trying to do here is to change culture, to build an adaptive culture.
You're a massive organisation in Australia. How do you systematically build culture at the pace it needs to be built today?
It's difficult, to be honest. The way that we try to do this is to rotate people through an innovation pod progressively for 6 or 12 months at a time, which in a way reprograms your brain. It reprograms you to see forces that you perhaps couldn't see before, to look at the world differently, and to look for non-conforming views. And that's something that's also very important for us. In organisations, culture sometimes can stymie. You have very strong cultures, but perhaps everyone's thinking the same way. So what we're trying to do is to actively seek out non-conforming views, whether that's internal or external.
Non-conforming recruitment? Who are you looking for?
We need to bring in a range of skills. Diversity of thought is the greatest friend that we can have. We know today that the greatest enemy we have is constraint of thought. So we need to unconstrain thought. So more often than not, I would say, James, we need to bring in really strong graduates from a range of disciplines who don't know things aren't possible and can help people like me imagine possibilities that we couldn't ourselves.
Understanding a lot more about this new and expanded role, does it feel like marketing needs an overhaul?
I think the brand of marketing, at least perceptually, James, is more anchored in the past, certainly in the minds of many key stakeholders. So I do think we need to think about marketing differently. I guess there's a lot of rhetoric in this area, but for me, marketing is about 3 words: solving customer problems. And in our business, that means creating amazing experiences, using data to do that, removing friction, changing culture, creating a more agile organisation, because solving problems for customers doesn't end. It constantly evolves. So I'd like to see marketing much more centred on customer problems. We tend to get very good at solving our own problems, and if we can set up our companies to solve customer problems and constantly do that, iterate, fast cycle, high velocity decision making, you end up with a really sustainable, really powerful organisation, and it's places that we all want to work.
Net Promoter Score, is that the right measure anymore?
I think it's a really useful metric, James, and I think it's one that we want to continue to really focus on. Having and generating high levels of customer advocacy is a really important part of a sustainable business. But it's also an outcome. If we can look at how to get the right input to get that outcome, then we also create much more velocity around advocacy. And one of the metrics that I think is really interesting and emergent at the moment is net easy, which is the extent to which customers thought that what they were trying to do was easier or harder than they thought. And if you can make things easy, I know it sounds not that exciting, but gee, if you can create a business where things are easier to do than customers thought, you're creating a high advocacy business.
Mark, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, James. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you for joining us on Marketing Dividends.